players. At number 5, Victor Wembanyama. Number 4, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 3, Luka Doncic. Number 2, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And number 1, Nikola Jokic. What do you think about this list? The fact that ESPN's top 5 players are from outside of the U.S. says a lot about the growth of international basketball. Send me your thoughts at ray@smileyAudiomedia.com. ray@smileyAudiomedia.com. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Break out the champagne. Everybody get a glass.
Travis Smiley is now ranked number 16 nationally and the highest-rated talk show hosted by an African-American on the 2025 Talkers Heavy 100 list of the most important talk radio hosts in the nation. Last year, Travis ranked number 33, and the year before, number 45. The Travis Smiley Show has rapidly expanded its national syndication to now include nearly 50 radio stations across the country and counting. Congratulations, Travis.
Yeah.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and White House correspondent, reporting live from Washington, D.C., where the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference is underway. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, D-R-N-I-I-Q, and there I am fresh for you to follow. Certainly, by all means, download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580, and there we are for your listening pleasure. Last but not least, subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you will never miss an episode. It's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. Kicking us off, former FBI Director James Comey is indicted today. NBC is reporting that former FBI Director James Comey was indicted just days after President Trump publicly said that the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi should prosecute him and 2 other political adversaries. The indictment includes 2 counts, making a false statement and obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Bondi said in a post on X that the indictment, quote, reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We will follow the facts in this case. The statement did not name Comey. Trump celebrated the indictment, saying, quote, justice in America, one of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed is to James Comey. And that's what Trump posted to Truth Social. Comey did not immediately respond to any requests for comments. This, I believe, is unprecedented. I can't think of another former FBI director that has been indicted by a president that clearly has his thumb on the Department of Justice. They've got to fight back. Democrats are pressing leaders not to cave in a shutdown fight. NBC also reporting that with the government funding deadline looming, the biggest sin in the eyes of the party's base, according to Democratic officials and activists, would not be losing to President Trump in a shutdown battle. It would be refusing to fight. You might remember in March, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer declined to use that leverage. The Democratic minority's ability to block legislation with a filibuster and allowed a Republican-written government funding measure to become law. Now, Schumer promises this time will be different, and with federal agencies set to run out of money at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday, the Democratic base is putting more pressure on him to either win concessions from Trump at a minimum, an extension of the expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies that limit the cost of health insurance for millions of Americans, or let a shutdown happen. And so I can double-click on this. Just here at the Congressional Black Caucus, a number of folks echoing similar sentiments. I know just yesterday I had a chance to go to a CBC press briefing. It wasn't clear to me what the red line is for CBC members or the Democratic caucus when it comes to what is, at the minimum, they're willing to accept in order to avert a government shutdown. When we come forward, we're switching gears. I'm really delighted to share a conversation that I had with actor, comedian, writer, television host, and political commentator John Fugelsang. He is a New York Times best-selling author of Separation of Church and Hate, the Same Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalist, Fascist, and Flock Policing Frauds. Don't want to miss this really compelling conversation with John. When we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, or when we come forward.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher, I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
You're still grooving, still connecting, still loving, still turning up, still thriving. You still got it, but your immune system, it weakens as you age. That's where vaccines come in. They help train and strengthen your immune response to fight off respiratory illnesses like flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, or COVID-19. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Book in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. Let's preserve black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests as we effort to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and delighted to welcome our next guest, John Fugelsang. He is promoting his New York Times bestseller titled Separation of Church and Hate, a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalists, fascists, and flock-fleecing frauds. That's what he says. I'm delighted to welcome this actor, comedian, writer, television host, and political commentator to A More Perfect Union. Welcome, John.
Doctor, what a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for this work. Let's start off by learning a little bit about why you decided to write a book about the separation between church and hate.
Well, sir, I come from an abnormally Christian background, I guess. My mom was a nun. She grew up in the segregated South and entered the convent right out of high school. The convent put her through nursing school, and she went off to work with lepers in Malawi, Africa. My dad was a Franciscan brother who became a teacher and taught history to Catholic boys in Brooklyn. After my dad met my mom when she was a nun. He fell madly in love, couldn't tell her, had to carry a torch in secret for 10 years. Wrote to her every week while she was in Africa to tell her all about what was going on in the States with LBJ and civil rights and Vietnam War. Eventually, they settled down and tried to raise us to be progressive, free-thinking Catholics, which is a great oxymoron. It's why I became a comedian. At some point, I grew up, like many, believing that Christianity was about the stuff that Jesus talks about. Service to others, loving your enemy, turning the other cheek. As in Matthew 25, when Jesus says individuals and nations must care for the poor, care for the sick, welcome the stranger, and be kind to those in prison. I grew up learning how Jesus overturned the death penalty and overturned eye for an eye in the Sermon on the Mount, and how Jesus commands us to not hate anyone, and he even says to pay your taxes at one point. And like millions, I grew up to find that this religion of peace and empathy and acceptance has seemingly been hijacked by a mean, overwhelmingly white, often bigoted, power-hungry, tax-free clique that doesn't fight for the teachings of Jesus. They don't fight for anything Jesus talked about. They fight for conservative Christian dominance over every level of our culture. And of course, this is nothing new, right? Ever since Rome took over Jesus' operation, and it went from being the movement of love by this brown-skinned Jewish homeless carpenter into an imperial religion of dominance, we got through the Crusades, and we saw Christianity used as justification for the violence of Columbus and the exploitation of the indigenous people, and justifying slavery, segregation, the Holocaust, exploitation of labor, so much homophobia. But all throughout history, every time Christianity has done this, Christ followers have pushed back. The first act of protest by a European in this hemisphere was by the Catholic priest on Columbus's mission, Bartolomeo de las Casas, who was appalled at the treatment of the Taino people. When slavery was propped up by Christianity, Christ followers, like Frederick Douglass and the Quakers and Harriet Tubman, pushed back. When Christianity propped up the Holocaust, martyrs like Dietrich Bonhoeffer gave their lives in resistance. Dr. King used the Bible to shame white America out of the mutually destructive apartheid of segregation. And we've all seen throughout history, so many of us have talked to parents and grandparents instead of so much homophobia. There's a real history of Christian activism. It always reveals itself in resistance to Christian authoritarianism. And I wanted to write a Bible for believers and write a book for believers and atheists about how these right-wingers don't actually follow this Jesus they wave around so bombastically, and how these policies aren't really reflected in the Gospels at all. Jesus is used for power. He's used to get them votes. Donald Trump never promised the evangelicals he'd fight for a single thing Christ talked about. He promised to put them on top. And Jesus' ministry is about humility and service, not total right-wing domination. So as a comedian, I wrote this book with a lot of humor in it to help people when they're debating the Christian nationalist or fundamentalist in their family, in their workplace, in their school, or in their social media feed.
I mean, I think it's just absolutely fascinating that we're hearing from the son of a nun turned nurse and a Franciscan brother. That's a very interesting pairing for parents.
I'm not supposed to be here. Yes, they promised God I would never happen, Doctor.
Well, clearly they couldn't keep that promise. But
there's the guilt. But that's another book.
Yeah, but you kept talking about conservative Christian dominance. And I want you to just sort of break that down, because I think there are a number of folks, many of our leaders, learners, and listeners have expressed their critique of faith leaders sort of missing the moment, elected leaders missing the moment. Talk to us about how this conservative Christian dominance has grown over the years, how it's gone from being sort of on the fringe to now being at the very center of American politics,
yes,
American life.
Well, whatever you think about abortion rights, the reality is that when Roe v. Wade was made law of the land, the most controversial thing was how not controversial it was. Most Christian denominations didn't care. The Southern Baptist Convention affirmed abortion rights before and after Roe v. Wade was passed. That was seen as the thing the Catholics did. And for me, growing up, if you grew up in the late 20th century and watched news, you saw this steady stream of ex-segregationists and blow-dried televangelists who took on criminalizing abortion as their main cause. Jerry Falwell built whites-only schools and supported apartheid. And in the 70s, their big political mission was fighting Jimmy Carter from taking tax-exempt status away from universities that were still practicing racial segregation. Ronald Reagan talked more about Jimmy Carter's IRS interfering to defend segregation in schools than he talked about abortion. It didn't catch on, but they realized that this would be an issue that would help them in the 80s. And over the last 40 years, we have come to see criminalizing abortion be the most important issue for conservative Christianity. And Jesus never mentions it. The Bible never forbids it. Exodus 21 pretty much says a fetus is property and a woman has more value in God's eye than a man. Numbers chapter 5 says God gives Moses rather explicit instructions on abortion for pregnant, unfaithful wives. I'm not saying that Jesus would be pro-abortion. I'm not saying that Jesus would be a clinic escort on the weekends. What I'm saying is they got followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. And now for 2 generations, 45 years, we've raised 2 generations of Christians believing that being mean to gay people and criminalizing abortion and now being cruel to Muslims and migrants is somehow something to do with Christ. And I just got tired of seeing this faith being abused in such a way. If you're against abortion, great. If you want to legislate and if you think it's good that governments force citizens to be pregnant against their will, if you believe in punishing poor pregnant mothers with greater poverty, then go ahead and fight for that. Don't pretend it comes from Jesus. And it's driven so much of our politics, the homophobia as well, the way that we see migrants treated today. I don't call them illegals. I call them Christian refugees. It upsets the right people. And the God of the Hebrew Scriptures commands us to welcome the stranger and treat the alien as one of our own. In Matthew 25, Jesus says, individuals and nations will be judged, heaven or hell, by how they treat the stranger. How did we get from that to this no room at the inn demonization of migrants and ICE agents in masks rounding up brown people at church picnics? It's insane, and it's got nothing to do with Christianity. So if you're not going to follow Jesus and do the opposite of what he says, don't pretend you follow it. But I wrote this book to help people have these debates. I don't think it's constructive to hate our right-wing loved ones. I'd rather talk about the shared values and what the Bible actually says. And it shows you how to make them argue with God, make them argue with the Bible. I say to these folks all the time, if God tells me to welcome the stranger and Christ tells me I'm going to be judged by how I do it, why should I listen to you and Donald Trump and ignore God and Jesus?
But I take your point. But I know there are a number of our leaders, learners, and listeners that are tapped in.
I know. Hello, everyone, by the way.
And folks are thinking about the relationship between white replacement theory and Christian nationalism. Can you untangle that?
I'd love to. Yeah. They're both absolute garbage. White replacement theory is regressive, racist garbage. Some say it's the Jews, right? Or some say it's just Democrats who want to bring in undocumented workers and give them citizenship so they can then turn Democrat and destroy the white race. Democrats can't even get elected when their ideas are more popular. I don't know how Democrats can't even bring universal health care. They've got a long-term scheme to have immigrants come in. I don't know any Democrats who are fighting for amnesty or open borders. You know who did? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to millions, and he argued for open borders. I don't know any Democrats who do that. So it's racism, it's dishonest, it's anti-Semitism in many quarters as well, and profoundly un-Christian. I mean, as bearing false witness goes, it's right there, but that's right up with Christian nationalism. And Christian nationalism believes that they, conservative Christians, should have power on all levels of society. This is the Seven Mountains mandate, that they're very right-wing, very narrow, very anti-gay, Confederacy-defending, labor-hating, billionaire tax-cut-loving version of Christianity should be imposed into our public schools and all levels of society. And I'm a big fan of the Bible. I'm a big fan of Jesus. I'm not a fan of pretending Jesus supports someone else's mean agenda. Christ's mission is all about humility. It's all about service. The last shall be first. He was not about complete and total right-wing domination of the school board or of government. And I like to say, if your church is not telling you to love your enemy, but it's telling you who your enemies are, you're not really in a church.
Yeah, you might be in a cult or worse than that. Look, it's a very informative, perspective-shifting book, and you go there. You go there. I mean, a lot of people are saying what you're saying behind the scenes, but you are saying the quiet part out loud, talking about how Christianity has been hijacked by the far-right groups and politicians who are seeking to impose their views on government and to justify oppressive and unequal policies. You know, a lot of folks, when they think of Project 2025 and maybe even Project Esther, they think that this is sort of like a new phenomenon. But we know better. We know that Project 2025 has been decades in the making.
Yes,
of the Heritage Foundation, among other conservative groups. We know Project Esther the same, and so when we see folks weaponizing anti-Semitism, for example, when we see folks doing everything they can to squash out pro-Palestinian anything, we know that that's not a coincidence. And even recently, former Vice President Kamala Harris, on her book tour, there's a video that's gone viral of pro-Gaza protesters protesting her at her book tour. She's not even the president.
I don't understand, because, can I tell you, I was riding my bike in Midtown yesterday, and Kamala was on the west side and Trump was in Midtown. Why aren't these people going after Trump? Trump is posting videos glorifying ethnic cleansing of Gaza and turning it into a resort town. I mean, 65,000 dead people, and starvation is literally a weapon of war. Amnesty International declared this a genocide last year. I mean, the Bible's really simple. If you believe in Jesus, then you have to love Palestinians and Israelis equally. And you can get fired from a TV show for saying something like that in this country, and I don't really understand why. You don't have to like Hamas. You don't have to like Netanyahu. I sure don't. They're monsters, but we're witnessing this, and it seems like it's designed for Christians to come in and save the day. I mean, where is that movement based on love and helping the less fortunate? Where are they swooping in from? They're not. And look, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they will take that blame for not doing enough to stop this human rights catastrophe in their last year in office. They'll always have to deal with that, but these protesters are full of crap. They're over here on the west side yelling at Kamala Harris on a book tour where Donald Trump, who's responsible for cheerleading the genocide with pom-poms and a skirt, and they won't go protest him? I'm sorry. I think they got their targets a bit mixed up, and I don't really see how attacking Kamala Harris on a book tour helps the people of Palestine right now.
You know, Kamala Harris, in her book, 107 Days, which just came out, highly anticipated, she says a lot of things in this book and attempts to say the quiet part out loud a lot in the book. I listened to about 4 hours of it on the flight from LA to DC. But one of the things that she talks about is the crisis, the war between Israel and Gaza. And, she doesn't mince words. She essentially, says that she implored the president, to demonstrate more empathy to the people of Gaza, to the Palestinian people. Is it even possible for the former vice president to, disentangle herself from President Biden's contribution to that crisis?
I was among the people really pulling for Joe Biden to do something. When he announced that pier they were going to have to bring relief aid in, and then it just washed away. And our whole lives have been watching TV wondering, why is this happening? How does supporting the occupation serve American interests? How does supporting the occupation help our lives get better? I don't get it. How does having Palestine be an open-air prison help us? It certainly doesn't help Israel. Netanyahu promised for 20 years to keep those folks safe, and that was a big old lie. In 2019, Netanyahu's on the record telling his party they have to keep Hamas in power because they need a villain. And by the way, I think this whole thing is how the Saudi royal family keeps themselves from looking like a villain. They want this conflict to go on forever, and I'm sure your viewers and listeners are as tired of all this death on both sides over the past 50 years as I am. I thought the vice president ran a great campaign. I think it's a mistake to call her book 100 Days and make it about, if only I'd have more time. This woman was in the race for 100 days and against the most famous man on earth. And she got more votes for president than almost anyone that's ever run, the third highest vote total of anyone to ever run for president. A mixed-race woman in the race for 100 days against the most famous guy in the world. She got more votes than Reagan both times, Clinton, Obama, Bush both times. And I think she has a great political future ahead of her if she chooses. But we need leaders with compassion and guts, and if that's what she's going for by talking about this, it's great. I don't know how these, what some have described as gossipy revelations, I haven't yet read the book, but a lot of Biden fans have been upset. I don't really understand how, dividing the party is going to help her long term. I think Joe Biden's first 2 years in office are maybe the most remarkable 2 years of any president of my life, and the second 2 years are a very different story. I hope this serves the vice president somehow. I'm not sure if this does. I'd rather see her putting her body in the movement, getting out there in the streets, leading marches, getting arrested. I mean, Bonnie Watson-Coleman just did my show, and she's 80 years old, and we all saw her getting shoved by ICE agents outside a concentration camp in Newark. I think the Democrats who are willing to put their body in the movement are going to be, and the Democrats who are willing to go there and promise that you will see hands-on Bibles and cabinet members testifying after the midterms. Those are the folks who are going to raise the most money and raise the most funds. And I think the vice president has a great career ahead of her if she wants it. And I hope she goes for it. I hope she goes for it with a lot of compassion and guts.
I got a quick take on that. When we come forward, you are listening to A More Perfect Union, and we're talking with John Fugelsang. He is the author of his New York Times bestseller, Separation of Church and Hate, A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalist, Fascist, and Flock-Fleecing Frauds. You are listening to A More Perfect Union. More when we come forward.
The audience is listening. Thought-provoking, eye-opening, heart-rendering. This is where authentic voices meet powerful discussions on culture, community, and change. This is where black voices matter. He's breaking boundaries, amplifying diverse perspectives, and tackling the issues that matter most to you. You're inside A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is announcing 2 new housing projects converting Williamsburg industrial buildings into 900 homes and an East Harlem parking lot into 800 units.
So instead of parking cars, we're going to park families so they can enjoy a home what they can call their own.
Since Adams' executive order last year, 11 projects have created 10,000 homes. A second former City Hall staffer is suing Black New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell's administration. Trisha Diamond claims she was fired for exposing misuse of at least $15 million in pandemic relief funds, including money sent to a nonprofit. And Sean Diddy Combs' lawyers are arguing commercial voyeurism is not prostitution as they push to overturn his conviction. The 55-year-old faces up to 20 years in prison with sentencing set for October 3rd if the verdict stands. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org. This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It's not too early to talk some NBA. In preparation for the start of training camp on Monday for all 30 NBA teams, ESPN is ranking its top 10 players heading into the season. The Lakers are the only team with 2 players on the list. Let's see if you agree with ESPN's top 10 ranking. At number 10, Jalen Brunson. Number 9, Kevin Durant. LeBron is at number 8. Steph Curry at number 7. Anthony Edwards at number 6. Here is the top 5, and all 5 are international players. At number 5, Victor Wembanyama. Number 4, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 3, Luka Doncic. Number 2, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And number 1, Nikola Jokic. What do you think about this list? The fact that ESPN's top 5 players are from outside of the U.S. says a lot about the growth of international basketball. Send me your thoughts at ray@smileyAudiomedia.com. ray@smileyAudiomedia.com. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Break out the champagne. Everybody get a glass.
Travis Smiley is now ranked number 16 nationally and the highest-rated talk show hosted by an African-American on the 2025 Talkers Heavy 100 list of the most important talk radio hosts in the nation. Last year, Travis ranked number 33, and the year before, number 45. The Travis Smiley Show has rapidly expanded its national syndication to now include nearly 50 radio stations across the country and counting. Congratulations, Travis.
JP Morgan Chase offers tips for the local business owners in 2025. Small business landscape is ever-changing, and the Los Angeles market is no exception. A startup or legacy business, revisiting your mission statement and recalibrating offerings can renew opportunities for growth and innovations. Programs like Chase for Business Coaching for Impact gives entrepreneurs access to expert guidance, helping you streamline operations, strategize your growth, and navigate complex challenges. Businesses with a clear sense of purpose can navigate any challenge effectively, but also build stronger customer loyalty. Visit chase.com/coaching for impact for more information. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdb.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All of these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
National news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and he is John Fugelsang. He is the New York Times bestselling author of Separation of Church and Hate, a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalist, fascist, and policing frauds. Before the break, John, we were talking about former Vice President Kamala Harris, who is on her book tour promoting her much anticipated book, 107 Days. I take your point in the fact that I think people want to see and hear more authenticity from their leaders, elected and otherwise. Take your point. And you were making the point that we need to see more leadership putting their bodies on the line, to the likes of Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, for example, who did that while paying a visit to an ICE facility in her district. But just yesterday, I was at the Congressional Black Caucus press roundtable with a number of members, CBC members, and one of them said something that stopped me cold. And they said that a number of these members have had to come to make peace with the fact that they could die in office, given the political rhetoric that we are seeing, the political violence that we're seeing in this country, that, by the way, is not new. Political violence is
not new at all
in the United States. But it doesn't mean that that people don't fear it, that folks aren't on high alert. In my view, you can't heal what you don't talk about.
Amen.
And in that frame, I think the former vice president's book could offer an opportunity for not just the Democratic Party to really heal from some fundamental fractures, but for people across this nation to heal, having heard somebody at the highest level with them.
Yeah.
Level with them. And so I think this is a test. This is a test as to when politicians give us sort of the unvarnished truth, when they pull back the cloak, when they say, hey, this is what's happened behind the scenes, is that really what we are looking for? Or are we set to be perpetually unsatisfied with our leaders?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't think we're necessarily looking for a knowledge of what's behind the curtain. I mean, most people aren't interested. Us news nerds are. But most people don't really care about the inner machinations. And, of course, the greatest problem we've always had is that 1/3 of us are pretty apathetic. That's going back to the Revolutionary War. 1/3 of us have to be dragged into the voting booth. But I still think this vice president could have a tremendous career of public service ahead of her. And I do think that she has the potential to even be a real agent of change, not just another Democrat who says nice things. When I was very young, I got to work as a marshal for the Nelson Mandela Welcoming Committee on his first trip to New York. I was at the Yankee Stadium rally. I was 20 years old, and it was one of the great moments of my life. And when I was at the DNC last summer in Chicago, and Kamala Harris took the stage, and I'm not making this up, I said it on the air, I had the same feeling I had in Yankee Stadium with Nelson Mandela. I had this incredible feeling in a stadium, an arena full of people, of thousands of people cheering this woman because of what she had achieved and because of the potential of what she could still achieve. And I swear to God, I don't really get misty-eyed about politicians. It very rarely happens for me. I try to be very cynical about them. But I think Kamala Harris represents so many things to so many people. And to have had, this mixed-race woman go up against the most famous racist, to have had this prosecutor go up against this felon and rapist, to have had this public servant go up against this grifter, that was a really attractive matchup for me. And, there'll be many years we'll be learning about who called in the bomb threats to all the majority black voting districts. There's a lot we still don't know about what happened in last year's election, but to have only had 100 days and have gotten the third highest vote total for president in history, a mixed-race woman in this country, I know I should be depressed about it, but I'm still kind of impressed she did that well. Imagine what she could do with a properly funded, well-timed campaign. So whatever she does, I'll support her. I worry, and you've read the book, so you're much more informed than me, Doctor. the headlines are always there for clickbait, and all the headlines they've run from this book are about, revelations about Joe Biden. That's trash, and we know that's how they market these things, but I'm really pleased to know that the book goes a lot deeper, and I can't wait to read it when I'm done with my book tour, because I'm 7 spots behind her on Amazon right now. I'm gaining on you, Kamala. I'm coming for you.
You are. Look, everyone can be a bestseller. Everyone who has something relevant to say that is.
Yes,
in our remaining moments, I want to talk about your book, Separation of Church and Hate, how a lot of people are thinking of it as a return to civility, as a roadmap of sorts. It helps us to mount a return to civility. You mentioned Nelson Mandela and his U.S. tour. You were 20 years old at the time. This is in the early 90s. I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old at the time when he visited his last stop, which was the Oakland Coliseum in the Bay Area, where I had a chance to witness this transformational leader. And it was an experience that also changed me. It changed my life. It changed what I believe was possible for not just political leaders, but leadership on the world stage. One of the things that I remember about that experience as a 6 or 7 year old kid was his capacity to forgive.
Yes.
And without knowing the particulars about his story at the time, I understood that much as a kid. That we can use our power to bring people together and to build that empathy muscle, or we can do the opposite, right? Yeah. In my lifetime, I've seen leaders on the world stage. There are examples of both extremes.
Amen.
But talk to us about the return to civility. What makes you so optimistic that we can return to civility as opposed to reimagining what civility can look like in the future, both online and offline?
Oh, great question. I mean, I don't consider myself an optimist. I consider myself a recovering cynic. I know how dark and bleak it is. I'm very in touch with all the negative aspects of it, and yet I think that hope is still profoundly logical and a profoundly smart choice. And I have tremendous faith in millennials and Gen Z and the young people to come. And what I believe is going to be the backlash against the last few years of overwhelming intelligence and decency by a younger generation that's tired of the ugliest parts of the 20th century still coming back like the monster in the horror film for one last scare. Clarence Thomas is on the Supreme Court, appointed by a man who opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Like we're not that far from this past. And civility is great. I believe in love. And sometimes, as a comedian, I'll say things that are obviously not civil. I'm plenty mean against these people. I only attack those in power and go against mean people. But love is the only thing that's going to save this country. Love for America and love from Americans. And I grew up around a lot of racist people, a lot of anti-Semitic people. I mean, I grew up in a culture that thought homophobia was piety. And the more I got into the actual teachings of Jesus, the more I was able to dismantle the apparatus that had raised me. And that's one of the reasons why Mr. Mandela meant so much to me. I know why he went to jail, and I know that, like Malcolm X, he went through an incredible transformation of humanity during his incarceration. I mean, if Malcolm Little hadn't gone to jail, he never would have become the great man that we all knew. And the same with Mandela. Thank God he lived, and thank God he had the maturity to make that growth, because hating these people is not going to work. We can't hate these Christian nationalists. For most of us, they're not nationalists or fanatics. They're our family members. They're our co-workers. They're our old friend from high school who, yeah, maybe he can't spell your correctly, but, I don't think he's got evil in his heart. He's just been misled. I mean, and you know this better than me, Doctor, there's bigots. There's real haters. And then there's these dumb white folks who are racist because they've been misled a certain way, and they don't have hate in their heart. They want to be good. They're trying to break through it. We've seen so many people grow so much. I mean, think about back to the AIDS crisis, and If you had told me back in the 90s that we'd see a black president decriminalize cannabis and marriage equality for gay brothers and sisters, I wouldn't have believed the human race was capable of that much in the 90s. So I'm ready to have my heart open and my mind blown away by how much better and more loving we can be, because I've seen the proof. I remember doing an AIDS walk and having my friends refuse to give a contribution because it helped gay men's health crisis, and they thought that was anti-Christian. I'm like, it's to help AIDS patients. And they thought, no, I'm too Christian to help AIDS patients. And look where we've come. I mean, you could get fired for being gay, and now America led the way. One of the swiftest advances for civil rights in the history of humans, and a minority that's an oppressed minority within every minority. And yet, look how much love has changed how we view our LGBTQ brothers and sisters in the last 30 years. America helped lead the way on that, and it happened because of a plague. The plague of AIDS led to all these allies coming out and all this goodness happening. And I've come to really believe that so much good, again, like Malcolm and Nelson Mandela's incarceration. Horrible things are going to happen. God guarantees that. But incredible good can come from these times of crisis and uncertainty, and that's the side of history I want to be on. That's the stuff Jesus talked about. And if you're just clinging to your religion or your club or your race or your group being on top, in power, in control, that's spiritual suicide. And it's not helping anybody.
Well, mic drop.
Is that okay? Did I do okay?
You did very well. You did very well.
You got a smart show, sir. I was a little bit intimidated coming here. I'm honored you would have me.
That's all right. That's all right. Look, the wonderful thing about this show is we get to learn together.
Amen.
Nobody has monopolized the market on learning. It's something that we all get to participate in no matter what. And so thank you for giving us lots of food for thought. I want to encourage our leaders, learners, and listeners to go out and purchase Separation of Church and Hate, a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalists, fascists, and flock-fleecing frauds. It is a solid read, dare I say, a timely and essential read from our friend, actor, comedian, writer, TV host, political commentator, John Fugelsang.
Doctor, if I could ever be of service to you, please let me know. It's an honor to be with you and speak to your audience.
Absolutely. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
So many things, big and little, make you uniquely you. Your hobbies, dreams, career, family, and more. Addiction to drugs, including opioids and stimulants, can strip these away from you. Recover your life. Choose treatment for drug addiction and get back to what matters most. Find a provider and proven treatment option that's right for you at ChooseChangeCA.org. Recover you.
Hello, KBLA delegation. Tavis Smiley here. On Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech becomes the epicenter of ideas that matter. The Left Coast Forum is bringing together voices that challenge, inspire, and illuminate, with keynote presentations from people like noted economist Richard Wolff, the man who breaks down capitalism in ways that make sense to working folk like you and me, and Dr. Cornel West will be there, the brilliant philosopher and activist who never stops fighting for justice and speaking truth to power and to the powerless, for that matter. So, this isn't just another conference. This is where ideas get tested, where the conversations that shape our future begin. Multiple plenary sessions, dynamic speakers, real talk about the issues that impact our communities, and then some good food and a live band. Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech, Left Coast Farm. The event is free and open to the public, but you must register at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can also peep the plenary topics. The future belongs to those who show up and engage. So, don't just think about change, be part of the conversation that creates it. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. We'll see you there.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, taste makers, and you, working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. And it's about time for the quiet part out loud. Some might even say it's about time for a little bit more of a reality check. Since we've been on air, USA Today is reporting that President Trump is signing a memorandum that's aimed at investigating liberal groups. And some say that Soros may be a very likely target. Let me explain. President Trump signed this memorandum aimed at marshaling federal law enforcement to investigate liberal groups, citing concerns about domestic terrorism as he ramps up efforts to go after political opposition. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel, he said that law enforcement would focus on who is funding such groups, saying that he plans to, quote, follow the money. The memorandum directs the National Joint Terrorism Task Force, as in the one that's a part of the FBI, to, quote, coordinate and supervise a comprehensive national strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation. It further states that the Terrorism Task Force should investigate institutional and individual funders and officers and employees of the organizations who, quote, aid and abet targeted groups. That means not just individual funders, but it also means their board members. It also means their employees. A lot of folks who may feel the pressure to have to lawyer up. The Treasury Department, Internal Revenue Service, and other federal law enforcement agencies also would participate in investigations, and Attorney General Pam Bondi is directed to submit a list of groups to classify as domestic terrorist organizations. No due process here, just politics. Pure politics. Trump recently urged Bondi, you might remember, in a social media post to seek criminal charges against high-profile critics, such as former FBI Director James Comey, Senator Adam Schiff of California, New York Attorney General Letitia James. You might have heard at the beginning of this broadcast that Comey was indicted by a grand jury today, capping a years-long effort by Trump to punish the former top federal law enforcement officer that he fired back in 2017 for investigating his 2016 campaign's contact with Russia. In signing the memo, Trump mentioned two major liberal donors who could come under scrutiny: George Soros and Reid Hoffman. Soros is a likely candidate for investigation. That's what Trump said. And he says it could be a lot of people. The president went on to say that if they are funding these things, they're going to have some problems because they're agitators and anarchists. Soros' Open Society Foundation rejected the idea that it funds terrorism in a statement released today in response to reporting by the New York Times. And the Trump administration is preparing to go after the group. Trump has lashed out at the left following the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, and more recently after a shooting at a U.S. ICE facility in Dallas that killed one detainee and injured 2 others. Things are not subsiding. Things are getting more serious. There are more people who are getting caught in this political vortex seemingly by the day, and it seems to be no end in sight. All of this, and we've got to ask ourselves, what are folks in opposition doing in response? You see, in my view, it's easy to pick off individual donors and individual organizations. It's easy to go after specific institutions. But we're not seeing enough of what happens when these individuals and organizations and institutions lock arms. That's what this moment is calling for. That's a part of what led to the very swift pushback against the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live. We saw so many different folks coming together across the political spectrum. So many folks who enjoy the First Amendment came together and said, not on my watch. And this is another one of those moments that we're going to have to come together. The idea that organizations that are fighting to advance racial justice, LGBTQ justice, environmental justice, gender justice, the idea that that without form or process, in a very nilly-willy sort of way, the idea that one president can decide who belongs on a terrorist watch list and who doesn't should terrify every single American, every single person of conscience. What should we do? It's simple. Remind folks that they're not alone. Lock arms. Hold tight. And face this thing together. In my view, that is the only way to proceed. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to the entire village of us for producing More Perfect Union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley. Our sound engineer, Brother Andy. To our show producers, Faraji and Hart and Journey. And to each and every one of you, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners. We curate this show each and every day with you in mind. We hope that you have enjoyed it. We hope that you've been fed by this news and information. And more importantly, we hope that you do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. Do your part to build a more perfect union. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and you have been listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown and a bipartisan group of attorneys general are opposing a proposed Capital One settlement, saying it cheats customers out of $2 billion in unpaid interest.